Good morning, Rain. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I just want to take a quick moment to introduce our future audience to you. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to speak with singer-songwriter Rain Perry. Rain is going to be releasing a brand new album on April 15th called A White Album. And that's just the beginning of what you do in your life with singing and songwriting. You do so many other things for the earth and its inhabitants. So I want to talk about that too. But thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
I really appreciate it.
Um, Before we get into the current world of music and what you're doing right now, I kind of wanted to ask you, you had such a unique upbringing, and I'm sure it made such an impact as to who you are today in your music and just in the way you carry yourself in life. But maybe you could talk a little bit about that, how things started for you and how life evolved into the current moment.
Sure. Well, I was born to two parents who met in theater school and got married rather quickly and broke up rather quickly. And then I went to live with my mom in kind of a religious cult, actually, a fundamentalist hippie church. And we did that for a few years. The full Monty of speaking in tongues and church 6 times a week, and she passed away when I was very young, and I went to live with my dad, and I was raised by him in throughout California, Colorado. He was kind of a restless, itinerant hippie artist guy, and it was an interesting childhood, but also a good one for a songwriter, because I had to adapt to a lot of different situations and learn about a lot of different people, and so anyway, so yeah, so now I live in this. I've lived in the same place for years, and have two adult daughters, and look very normal from the outside.
I'm sure that over the course of years, that all the different changes that you went through in life gave you quite a palette of topics for songwriting, right? You didn't have to sit there and think, what am I going to write
Yeah,
about today?
I have had to do that sometimes, but yeah, no, it's true.
Right,
Yeah, I wrote a whole record about growing up with my dad. Yeah.
right, right. And is it nice? I'm thinking it must be nice to have that stability of saying, okay, I was, as a youth, I was all over the place, different places. And now, like you said, I'm here for many years and this place doing this. It must be nice
Yeah,
just to kind of,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Both my husband and I, he also moved a lot as a kid, and it's not like we planned, like we're never leaving, but that is kind of what we did. And we like going places. I like going places and performing, or going places for fun, but I love coming back to my same bed.
nice to have a place to lay your hat at the end of a day or at the end of a tour or the end of a
Yeah,
mission project. So
yeah.
great. Um, when was it through all of that you realized that music was something that you wanted to be involved with? I mean, you had it, like, obviously you said, a musical family. When was it that you decided it was something you wanted to do with the rest of your life?
Well, it was always there. My mom was a songwriter. My grandmother was a songwriter. My great grandmother played piano and for silent movies. Doing music seemed really normal to me. I don't think I ever didn't think I was going to do it. I think it was always going to be something. Uh, and honestly, I teach songwriting now, and honestly, I now understand how rare that was. To have that encouragement, but also just to have it be so normal. Not everybody has that.
Yeah, if you think about sometimes like maybe the child of a TV star or movie star, that's how they grow up. They don't know. Everybody else knows the world as their parent is somebody else, but they grew up with them. And doesn't everybody have a parent who's on TV? Doesn't everybody have
Yeah,
songwriting parents?
yeah, yeah. It's just life. It just feels like life.
Right. And it also worked out for you in a sense that it wasn't a forced thing because you enjoyed it. It sounds like, you really enjoyed it as a youth too. Some people grow up, in the family plumbing business or the electrician or the pizza place, and they're
Yeah.
expected to take over. And when that moment comes, the moment of truth, and says, that's really not me, you know.
Yeah, I thought about that recently. There a couple of people I know, their kids are working with them now, and it seems good, but I hope the kid really wants to do that, because maybe they want to do something else. I don't know. Yeah, for me, Yeah, I mean, I never felt pressured. I was super motivated as a young musician. I was just hungry to learn everything I could, and so I was pretty self motivated.
And you talk about teaching songwriting. You say you're teaching songwriting now. It's an interesting thing, right? The word teach, right? Because it's something that you acquire over time, and you teach it, and you teach, like, you give them ideas, you give them leads as to how to do it and how to put the brain in. I'm a songwriter to an amateur songwriter, and
Yeah.
it's hard to, you giving them a foundation of teaching it,
Yeah. Well,
but it's
or
a lot of
just
on the job.
certain skill sets, certain techniques that you can rely on, that I've come to rely on, where I'm like, if I'm stuck, I can try this or whatever. But for me, when I teach, the most fundamental thing is giving people permission that they can presume to write something. Like, I just give them permission by taking the class. It's like, yes, you have a right to be here as much as any other human. And that in itself makes a huge difference for people. Just the thought that they can have a right to do it.
You're giving them empowerment. You're empowering them to
Yeah.
know that it's something that's in their skill set. And there is no one way. And I'm sure that's something you teach them too. There's no one way to do it. Everyone's going to do it differently. You can never do anything wrong. If you start a song, you don't have to finish it. All those things that I'm sure you teach them when
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
writing notes on a napkin when you're in a restaurant and you're like, okay, at this moment, or, whatever it is, stopping, letting the world, taking the world in. So I'm sure it's
Yeah.
very,
Well, I mean, the one thing is to make sure you save those notes, like make sure that whatever it is that whatever form, like I dictate into my phone, to make sure that you compile them and don't lose them, because that's the one thing. Like, every time I think I'm going to remember something later, it's gone.
right. I've
So
learned that the
that's,
hard way so many times. I honestly have. I thought
oh,
I'd remember a melody, and it's gone out the window. And so, and I'm a little
gone.
more probably OCD than most, but I would create a file cabinet with green folders that were songs that were, I guess, finished, whatever that means, from top
Yeah.
to bottom.
Yeah.
But then lyrics that were just starting, and with song names in red folders. And I'd go back to them once in a while. That was back in the day when I had time. So.
That's smart. That's a smart system. I like it.
Um, there was a period of time when you had to step away from your music altogether a little bit and just kind of focus on your health and your family. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that. And what was it like to kind of make a second entrance into your craft of what you want to do with your life?
Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. So I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis when I was 22. And I went from playing the guitar all the time to being unable to play it in just a few months. And I've never played it since. And so for me, I thought I could just figure out another way, but it was very heavy and very depressing. And I kind of just, I could, for one thing, I was feeling really in pain a lot, and for the first 8, 9 years that I had it, that the medications or what they had to offer you wasn't great. Um, and so I kind of just quit. Like, I didn't mean to, but I just didn't feel so. But I was creative. Like, I wrote a screenplay, or I just tried some other things. And I had a young daughter, and I was busy with all that. And then at a certain point, a friend started this cover band, and he wanted me to be in it and sing and be one of the backup singers. And I was like, all right, okay. And I began to kind of find my way back in. And for me, the challenge was, I had always just kind of played my guitar, and people had played along with me, or whatever I did. I didn't really know the vocabulary to describe. I knew the chords and everything, but I wasn't a band leader at all, really. And once I couldn't play, I had to find a way to articulate what I was trying to do. So I had to learn to use actual musical terminology and learn how to communicate with musicians. And so the irony was, I actually really became a musician once I couldn't play, because I had to think like a musician. And then, and I worked with different people and found a way through sort of like show and tell, like, listen to this song, kind of a drum thing like this, or, and eventually technology kind of caught up with what I needed. And the iPad GarageBand app has
Yeah.
every instrument that you could need to write with. And then I was able to get like a basic strum and kind of figure out a bass part. So now I write fully orchestrated demos on there. I mean, I write in my head, but then I make a demo there.
Yeah.
And so I found my way back. And then I met my partner, Mark Hallman, who is my music producer. And he is just like the other half of everything I do, because I write the songs and I give him these demos, and then he just makes them into songs. I mean, he orchestrates and produces them and turns them into what I'm hearing, but he can do it. So yeah, it's been a process, and it's ended up being I wasn't that great of a guitar player to begin with. That wasn't my goal. I just kind of wanted to play so I could sing and write songs. And so I just work with really good musicians now who are way better than I ever was going to ever be, and I'm not limited by what I can play. So.
Right. No, it's a great situation. It sounds like working with Mark has been such a godsend, in the sense of being able to just take what's in here and using technology, using his skill set and everything, just be able to do that. So you've made this work in a wonderful way. And the world of music fans is awfully glad that you found the way to do that, because just very special songwriter and singer. So,
Thank you so much. Gosh.
You're welcome. We're going to talk a little bit about your past projects in a minute, but I want to talk about this upcoming release first. The new album, a white album, comes out in April. Can you explain the title a little bit? The title, and then a little bit the subject matter that revolves around the title.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the time that I was starting to write this record, it was kind of at the beginning of the pandemic, and I was like, let's make the best of it and write some stuff. And so much about racial divisions in our country. I mean, it's never gone, but it was really at the forefront in early last year. And I found myself thinking, like, we have to talk about this. We have to talk about it in a way that's going to be effective, because on the one hand, there's, a lot of people who are like, we don't want to talk about this. We want to pass laws that say you can't talk about anything that's going to make us feel bad. On the other hand, there's people screaming at each other and not really getting anywhere, and people sort of having to decide, am I racist or am I not, right? And I just don't think that's the right question. I think that we were raised in a society. I grew up with stuff that influences, and rather than asking, am I or not, a better question is, how am I? That's something we can do something with. I can go, wow, I'm making an assumption about somebody because of their race or because of their political affiliation. I might make all kinds of assumptions about somebody, and that's not going to help our society. So anyway, my favorite songs are personal. Like I'm a big Springsteen fan, for example, and I so relate to a story of a guy, as opposed to like a song about economics. I mean, I love the Clash too, so sometimes a song about economics is what I want to hear. But right. But yeah, so for me, I just thought, I can't make any kind of statement that anyone's going to want to listen to, but I can talk about myself, and I can talk about my own experiences and things, realizations I've had, and try to tell this in a personal way. So that's what this record is. It's me. It's kind of a sequel to my first record I did with Mark, which was called Cinder Block Bookshelves. And that was the story of growing up with my dad. And it's me looking at my same life, but through the lens of race. So it's a white album. It's not the white album. That would be the Beatles. Technically called The Beatles, but referred to as the white album.
Right.
Yes,
sure.
And yes, I'm not sad for any confusion anyone has, because that will only help me promote it.
Of course.
But it's a white album. It's my white album. Everyone else has a different take. And so I'm just trying to dig into this very fraught conversation in a way with an open heart. That's what I'm trying to do. And for myself, patience for myself as I learn things, and patience for people who are trying to figure out how we're gonna come to a better place about this topic in this country. So there's a very long answer to your question.
No, I'm so glad you explained it, because you know it's something that needs, you know, to talk about and put it out there, and that's what you're doing through your music. It's good that when people step into the project, they kind of to listen to it when it comes out, so they know where you're going with it. You know, sometimes people just hear a nice melody in the background, and, oh, I like this song, I like her voice. But to listen and to understand what the topics are, the topic of the day on this album, and to really kind of, you know, put yourself in a mindset, okay, I'm going to listen to Rain's album right now and listen to what she's got to say about, and take, you know, what we listen to talk show hosts, we listen to radio personalities, we listen to people and try to grasp what they're trying to talk about. Well, it's an educated musician to sit down and listen to you and say, okay, I want to understand where she's going. I love her melodies. I love her voice. I want to know what she's got to say about this, you know? So it's, I think,
that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I was really, when I was working on this, I was really listening to some of those great records from the 70s, like Stevie Wonder's Inner Visions or What's Going On, or, you know, that were very relevant culturally at the time, but also were just great, fun records to listen to. I'm like, if it isn't enjoyable to listen to, no one's going to listen to it. So there's no point. So I really wanted to make the record engaging and hopefully fun, while dealing with some of these greater themes. So,
and that's what I think a gift is of yours, that, you know, that in listening to the first track to listening to The Money, the single that's coming, you know, that's out right now,
yeah, it's out.
is taking it and making it fun. You're talking about some deep things and very specific policy, you know, redlining and talking, you know, and but you're making it fun through kind of a rap, you know. It's really neat, and it's like, wow, this is cool how you've taken it and woven it into something that's fun to listen to, a fun beat, and it's a topic that needs to be thrown on the table.
Yeah, it's kind of schoolhouse rock, I think.
Yeah, exactly, right. That's a good example, a good way to explain it. Yeah.
Yeah, I never really knew I was going to write a song about federal housing policy, but it just happened, and I was like, okay, and it needs to have 3 parts, sort of like silly love song. That's just what was happening. I'm like, okay, and I'm like, this is what's coming out. Okay, all right. And it was all based on a conversation that I had with a high school friend who's a history teacher. And I forget even how we got on the topic, but she was explaining redlining to me. And I didn't know what it was because it didn't affect my life, you know, as far as I knew. And she explained what it was and how it affected people when the policy existed and why it continues to affect people today. That was the key part. Like, people are like, oh, this stuff happened so long ago, why are people still mad? Well, it's still happening. You know, this policy has effects that continue to this day, and that's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, and I think that it really comes across as very thoughtful, thought-provoking topic, and you're right. And there are so many people out there who, for all the people that we see that sometimes aren't socially conscious and need to once in a while just, you know, be reminded of all the things around them that are not, you know, that maybe they can have a chance to impact in a positive way. Maybe it doesn't directly affect them, but it indirectly affects the way that the world turns. And and also people who are, you know, I spend a lot of time around people who we perceive of ourselves as socially conscious. I live in a hippie town, you know, kind of an artsy town, and I grew up amongst the hippies. And I've heard some of the most horrible things from people who consider themselves very progressive. I think we all have work to do. We all have assumptions that we're making that we could stand to question a little bit, you know, and I think that we can do it. We just have to have, we have to be patient with ourselves, and we have to be patient with each other. And we have to start from the most challenging thing, especially in this fraught time where, like, on Twitter, like, you just get attacked if you say the wrong thing or whatever. You have to start from where you are, and where a lot of us are is we have a lot to learn, you know. But if we can take a breath and you know, listen and learn, I don't know, I think we'll get somewhere. With the help of people like yourself who bring it onto the table, I think we will. And, you know, every single one of us, we all have so much to learn. You know, life is an ongoing learning process. And even when we might think for that moment, we have that false sense of, okay, I guess I got this figured out, someone like yourself or a friend, a family member can say something to, a colleague that makes you say, oh, maybe I don't have it all in place that I thought I did. Maybe there is something else I can do to re-explore that and to maybe even help fix the problems.
Yeah. 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 And I mean, because that's really what it comes down to. It's like I can have all the self-awareness I want, but if it's just about that, who cares? I mean, I care, but it doesn't change anything. And that's something that I think people they kind of throw around is like, well, you're just doing this to make yourself, you're performative or whatever. You're just doing this to make yourself feel better, or you're trying. And it really comes down to what are you doing about it, and to me the answer for me to that is representation is making sure, doing what I can do to make sure that our elected officials are the music we listen to, the people that get promoted through the media represent America, and we've got a ways to go.
We sure do. We sure do. But anyone who takes the time to learn more about you will understand that it's not just in your song, but it's in the actions that you've taken. You're very involved in so many organizations, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But there's so many different things and initiatives you've taken to help make the world a better place, and that's it. So it goes beyond the song to what you do with your life, how you carry yourself. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But certainly, that's a big part of who you are, and being able to have this platform and then go out and put your money where your mouth is, or whatever the saying is, or put your words into action, or whatever it is. But it's certainly something you've done by just taking a part in the community and the world around you. So we'll talk about that too.
Okay.
I believe that the album has 7 tracks on it and 5 are originals. And then how important was it? Is that right? Or is it?
It has 9. There's
9. Okay.
7 originals and 2 covers.
Okay, great. And so how important was it for you as you put it together, the sequencing and deciding what track went in which order, especially in a world where streaming happens and people just say, I'm listening to this song first and that's so, how important is that to you as you put this together?
It's vital. I think I put a lot of thought into it. I think most of us who sort of started making records in the album era, we do think about the sequence. I'm telling a story, and the story has a beginning and it goes through a thing and it comes to an end. That said, I recognize people listen how they listen, so I don't really have control over that, but I do hope that people will try listening in the order in which I intended, because I think there's a greater meaning to come from listening to that arc. I was really happy about something Adele did, which is she made Spotify change their setting, which was automatic shuffle was their default playback setting. And she said she wouldn't release her record to them unless they changed it to so that automatically it played it in the order it was intended, and you could set it to shuffle if you want it. And I was really grateful for that. Talk about using your platform to do something good.
Goodness,
I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Shuffle automatically? Come on. So, but I mean, but also I don't want to be an old fogey who's like, the way we did it in my day, but yes, I do intend a certain thing by the order of the songs for sure. A lot of thought goes into it.
In talking to so many artists, it's such an important thing. It's the art of connecting each song. It's the thread that weaves through the album. And boy, I didn't know that
reading a book, like reading a book out of order.
Right. You wouldn't read chapter 5 first, right? Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if that's the kind of person you are, you can choose to do that, but I think most people want to do it in order.
Right. No, that's a great way of thinking about it. I love that analogy. And I didn't hear that about Adele. And that's how, like you said, how cool to use your platform, that she used her platform to do that. That's huge, because it really does. They could still shuffle, they could hit that button, but why should it be the default, right?
Right. Yeah, no, I was very happy with that.
That's really impressive. That's really something. And it's I'm sure so many artists out there who are so grateful for that, because, like you said, people could do what they want to do. There's nothing wrong with shuffling some songs you want to hear. Maybe that's the way someone's going to hear one of your songs and then go back and learn more. So there's pros and cons, but by the same token, when you have an album, to be able to have someone, and if they know you well enough, and in your conversations with people, you're telling people, this is how I wrote it in this order. then they
Yeah.
can take the time to maybe do that because they want to, and they know that that's what you intended.
Well, and they'll get something out of it, you know, they'll
Right.
get a deeper meaning of, they'll get the story I'm trying to tell.
Right.
Yeah, so I think there's a benefit to the listener, and not everyone. I mean, and there are quite a few artists these days who are continuing to release records in that vein. They have singles, but like Kendrick Lamar, his stories tell. I mean, his records tell a full story, and they're
Yeah.
in a certain order. You know, Beyonce, obviously, and so you know, that's Taylor Swift does too, and so that's not gone. You know,
No.
but I'm glad there are some of the newer artists who are continuing to do it that way, because I think it's great. I write albums knowing that some of the songs will be more like singles.
Right. Right. And some of those artists that you mentioned, they put interludes in, like musical interludes that connect the songs and the mood and everything. It's really kind of neat how that's evolved over time to have, it might be a 25 track album because 10 of those tracks are little interludes or a couple words of something that connects the next song. It's really interesting how it's evolved.
Well, and that's an experience that's so great that I'm glad that younger generations of people are getting a chance to have the thing of putting on your headphones and spending, you know, 45 minutes or whatever going through this story and having the whole experience. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, certainly. You mentioned Stevie Wonder a little while ago in the Intervisions album. I want to go back to that. First of all, I'm a huge fan of Stevie Wonder, and I was naturally excited to see that you covered the song Visions as a duet with Akina Ederle. I can't wait to hear this collaboration.
Oh man, I was so excited that she said yes. Yeah. So for those who don't know, Akina Ederle is an Austin artist. She's a singer and a songwriter, great songwriter, and she's from a legendary musical family. Her grandfather was Cannonball Adderley. The rest of her family, they're all they're teaching, they're performing, recording. They're very robust musical family. So anyway, I asked her to perform on the record, and we decided to do this cover. I usually do a cover or two on every record, and so I was trying to pick, you know, one of those great songs, but I didn't want to do one everyone had already done, and I didn't want to do one that was too I don't know, familiar. And that song is known to people, but it wasn't the single. It wasn't, you know, it's not Superstition or, you know, whatever like that. And so, yeah, and musically, it's really different from most things. It's kind of a jazz trio, instrumentation. We tried to make it a little different from the original. We took out that guitar thing that goes throughout the whole original. We took that out. It might get referenced once or twice, but and so it was Mark Hallman played the upright bass, Michael Jorgensen from Wilco plays the keyboards, and then a really great local guitar player, Martin Young, is on the electric guitar, and then it's just Akina and me singing. It's very simple, but the chords are not simple. Everyone was like, oh my, they're like, oh my God, these chords, but they were also like, oh, Stevie, it's so amazing. Everyone was just falling in love with Stevie Wonder all over again.
Oh yes.
Just getting a chance to try to perform it, you know, it was a master class in songwriting. My God.
Yeah. You know, growing up, I didn't appreciate him as much as I do now. I just, you know, it was the singles. I love, you know, like you said, Superstition, Sir Duke, whatever, Isn't She Lovely, all those songs. And I was, you know, I appreciated the music. But then I was working with someone who said, listen to this, listen to You Are the Sunshine of My Life, and listen to how each layer happens. And it happened in college too. You know, the teachers would say, take this song apart and really analyze it. And now I love tracks like the ones you're describing much more than the hits, because I listen to the genius of his songs that aren't the radio songs that everybody's used to. They're amazing.
Oh my God. And he plays pretty much every instrument, you know, he's a monster. I got to see him perform at like an Obama fundraiser one, you know, years ago. And it was him with a full horn section, backup singer, like the full thing. And it was God, I mean, because he's done kind of mellow, you know, adult contemporary music for a while, and getting to see it burning down, it was like, oh yeah, this is Stevie Wonder. Yeah, okay.
Just amazing, right? The live performance. And I had always hoped that I would get to see him live. And I finally did a few years back to, also like you described, it was like he was doing the one tour and it had been, he doesn't tour that much. So it was that one tour he did, and he had his daughter with him on stage and everything, and big, huge, band. And I'll never forget it. And they made a concert DVD of that show, of that tour. And it's just so amazing to watch that song for song, not in the same city, of course, but to watch that performance and see what he had done and be able to capture that from that. That was a magic evening to see him live.
Awesome. I would love to have seen the whole thing. Wow, that's great. Yeah. So Akina and I sing Visions, and it holds a really great place in the record because it comes, speaking of sequencing, it comes after a song called What's Wrong With You. And that song is about people who call the cops on people just living their lives, in particular, these mostly women. And I'm just like, what is wrong with you if you're going to do that? Like, here's somebody having a barbecue and you call the cops. Like whatever else you say, people can disagree about a lot of things, but there is no good reason to do that. And so, so the song Visions comes after that, and it takes this very poignant place of, like, for one thing, me being white and Akina being black, of singing this song about what if, imagine a different world. And I find it pretty moving.
It sure is. I mean, I sat down last week when I knew that we would have the opportunity to talk and learning about the tracks on your album, and seeing you covered that, I went back and looked at the lyrics, listened to it again, and to that song specifically. And I could see how, with this album being the concept that you've put together to talk about and explore, how it fits so perfectly into it. It's not like, I'll cover a Stevie Wonder song. No, I'm going to cover a Stevie Wonder song that just fits what I'm trying to get across in my album. So it's wonderful.
Yeah. Thank you.
I understand you're working on a stage version of a White Album. What's the timing for that project? Maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Sure. I'm still writing it, and I have a feeling that if anything, it'll be in the workshop phase when this record actually comes out. The woman who directed, so my first record my very first record was kind of a do-it-yourself record. My second record was the first one I did with Mark Hallman in Austin, and that was called Cinderblock Bookshelves, and it was a memoir, and I performed it as a play. So it was me and a guitar player, and it was stories of my childhood, and it's actually available as a podcast. It's a radio drama now that I turned into a podcast, so you can find that on where you get podcasts. Cinderblock Bookshelves, and it weaves through the music and stories. And so this is going to be similar, but I'm kind of looking at it as more of a band thing. So the best I've come up with, I don't know, have you heard of this play, What the Constitution Means to Me?
I've heard the name, but I don't really, not familiar with seeing it or hearing it.
It's a woman talking about her personal experience with the Constitution, like learning about it in school, and then how it's affected her life. It's kind of a memoir of her and the Constitution. And so what I'm imagining for the theatrical part of a White Album is that it's kind of a cross between What the Constitution Means to Me and Stop Making Sense.
Neat.
You know, that it's that it's some kind of theatrical memoir-y thing with a great band. That's what I'm picturing. And so I'm in the process of writing it, and figuring out how to weave the songs through stories and fill out some of what the album does. And so I don't have a specific timeline for it yet, but it's well underway.
That's exciting. I mean, it's knowing that you've done this once already, like you said, with Cinderblock Bookshelves, that you're going back into that part of your art and turning that into it. When you talk about something like Stop Making Sense, and it kind of puts it in perspective what you're trying to accomplish, because it's like that documentary film concert / we woven together, it's really.
And the staging too of Stop Making Sense, the way it's like kind of a black box, and then sort of things kind of come in, and there's different, it's sort of homegrown, but also professional. Yeah. So there's a lot about that ethic that it kind of appeals to me. So
yeah.
TBD a little bit.
It's something exciting to look forward to for people who hear the album and want to see it put in, put out in a different way like that, and they'll really appreciate it because they'll have time to absorb the album, right?
Fingers crossed.
Yes,
I
yes.
hope so. I hope so.
I wanted to ask how it came about that we're talking about Cinder Black Bookshelves, how the song Beautiful Tree got put in front of the producers of the CW show Life Expected, and it became a theme song for their show. How did that come about?
Yeah, that was a crazy series of coincidences, starting with me making my record about my own family and my own life. And the final song on the record is the song Beautiful Tree, which is kind of sums up the whole story. And speaking of sequencing again, sums up everything. And it's just kind of like, my family tree is a mess, but it's my tree and it's a beautiful tree. That's the message of the song. And I had the thought when the record came out, I was like, God, that would be a great theme song for some quirky family drama, on the WB or whatever. And then I just kind of put that thought away because I didn't know how to do that, how that would ever happen. I go to music conferences, and I always go to the panel discussions, and I always go to the ones on getting your music placed. Shoot, am I still here? I just noticed my internet connection.
Yeah, you're okay. Yep, you're okay. Right. Yep.
Okay, good. So anyway, one of the panels was on, getting music placed on film and television. I always go to everything because you never know where you're going to learn some useful information. And I gave my CD to somebody on the panel, and we ended up talking. And I, the way people may not know, but there's this whole quadrant of the music business. For sync means synchronizing music and picture, right? And it's promoting your music to be placed on film and TV and commercials and games too. And that's become a huge business as the income has evaporated out of so much of the rest of the music business. So anyway, through a series of somebody promoting my song and getting it to somebody who then listened to it, it made it to the producers of this show, and all of a sudden I get this phone call that they've chosen it as their theme song. And I'm immediately, looking up like Life Unexpected, and then I I read it. I'm like, oh, this is like a real show. This is a show on the CW network. So it became their theme song. The show ran for a couple seasons. It wasn't long lived, but it was very beloved and very sweet, very heartfelt little family show. And so that was, and then through another weird series of coincidences, I ended up performing in a music festival episode of the show as myself. So that was surreal. But
yeah, that is so cool. That's so cool how, like you said, a series of coincidences, but you had your antennas open to the world of that because you had been going to seminars and things just to kind of understand how it works. So you were open to it happening, if anything, right?
It's like fish. It's like fishing. You're just trying everything. You don't know what you're going to catch. And usually the place I'm fishing doesn't lead to anything, but at least to something else kind of from left field. That's been my experience. I try, you have to keep trying stuff, but the result is usually something you would never expect. Right. And that's been that. I mean, I've just had lots of great connections and coincidences from left field.
Well, since we were talking about this whole process for you, and you also mentioned that you had gone to seminars and workshops to learn how this all works. I want to go back to when you talked about the songwriting before as a teacher, because I want to just make the point to listeners that when, in saying teaching of songwriting, it is so important. It's something that people that want to write, like myself, that we write, to have a mentor, whether it be in person, over the internet, through a course, because there's no one way to do it, but to hear different people's perspectives is how they do it, because you're a voice in the industry of how you do it and the successes, and to encourage them to go to seminars, to encourage them to have a voice in the industry who's found success in the recording world, give them some tips as to how to do it. And then, like you said before, also empower them that there's no one right way, but these are the ways that work for me, or these are ways I learned from other people. You're sharing that breadth of.
And you pull your influences, you pick the ones that work for you. And I'm still doing it. Like while I was working on this record, I knew I needed some song to kind of kind of sum things up, and I was not coming up with any idea. And I did what I often do, which is I booked the studio. So then I had to finish the song.
Right.
And because I could, I can't book Mark's studio and then not show up because he's depending on me showing up. So that's what I do to myself to make myself get stuff done. And I needed another song. So I ended up taking Mary Gaucher's songwriting class because I respect her so much as a songwriter, and I knew she was doing it. I'd kind of been wanting to for a while. And it was like 6 sessions long or 5 sessions long. I was not coming up with anything the whole time. And finally in the last class, she gave a prompt that clicked, and that turned out to be the song on the record called Lady of the Harbor, because she has people read the poem at the base of the Statue of Liberty. And I read it and I'm like, oh, that's it. And I rewrote it in different words, and that's the song.
That's really a great story. That's a great story.
Mm-hmm.
And how when you as a songwriter, you learn from people too, and then you bring everything that you learn from them into the world for these other people. So we're all teaching each other through our own experiences to the people that we learn from. So it's an ongoing process that's so important.
Well, and you have to stay curious. I mean, some of the most knowledgeable people in my life, the people I learn the most from, are the most curious. They're willing to learn from anybody who has something to teach them, and they're humble in the face of what they don't know.
Right. You've collaborated with so many household name musicians, people like Sarah Hickman and Victoria Williams, and over the course of your recordings, and then like Tom Russell, Nancy Griffin recorded Yosemite as a duet. I mean, amazing. Is there anyone else out there right now? I mean, is there anyone else? Of course, but I mean, are there people specific that you feel like, I would just love, I just feel like our songwriting style or our voices are similar that I would love to work with?
Bruce Springsteen.
I thought you might say that. I thought you, from your earlier comment, I thought you might say that.
I mean, if Bruce wanted me to do whatever, I would not say no. Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, definitely. There are tons of people I admire who I would be honored to work with. And I have had great, it has been really great. I've been able to work with a lot of really great people. Matt the Electrician and I sing a duet on one song. On the next single for this record, Ben Lee sings with me, Australian Ben Lee, who I actually met on the set of Life Unexpected, where we were both playing ourselves. So that was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And for people wondering like how to make that kind of thing work, I have 2 pieces of advice. One is make yourself useful. Like I host house concerts, and not like regularly, but just when one of my friends is coming through, I'll have them play in my backyard. And I work really hard to make a good experience for the artists and a good experience for the listeners. And that's led to some really great friendships, including people like Chuck Prophet, who played on my last record. And so that, people know me by the time I ask them for something. So, and know that I know a thing or two, and that I have, and that I'm good. Like, be good, be as good as you can. And I just find that people, if you ask respectfully and humbly, people will consider a lot of things, if they think that you're for real, and they think that you are, that you take yourself seriously and you're respectful of them. People are very open, I think. I've found. Not everyone.
It's great advice though. And what do you have to lose, right? If someone just says, no, I'm sorry, or they don't respond, you've tried, and you could have 99 no's, but that one yes made every single approach worth it. And I also feel like, the industry has changed so much in the sense with social networking and social media, you can reach someone that you never, ever imagined you'd have a conversation with by just sending a random message, tweet, Facebook post, Facebook message, whatever it might be, because they're not protected by label industry reps and assistants. And sometimes in this world, they're more willing to just talk to someone who cares about their music.
Yeah, people on. That's the upside of Twitter. I mean, Twitter is a cesspool for sure, and a place to really decide that you hate humanity. But it's also a place where you can connect with people. And I, like Twitter for me, I've gotten into this whole subculture of magicians. I have some magician friends there now,
Neat.
and
Neat.
I'm learning a lot. Like I've been mentored by a great mentalist, and a totally different art form,
Yeah.
but still trying to answer the same questions really about life, like who are we and what are we trying to do here, and how do I get through this life? That's really what we're all trying to answer with our art. And yeah, so yeah, and I just find being persistent and friendly and respectful,
Yes.
and people will respond.
All three of those go together so well, because being persistent but unfriendly and unrespectful doesn't work, but being persistent but in a friendly and respectful way gets people's attention. Sometimes they know that it's not just a passing question, that you're serious about it, and you're polite about it, you respect their time and their place and what they do in life. And sometimes I've just talked to so many people who have had dream collaborations just because they asked.
Yeah. Well, and people like to have fans. Everyone loves it if somebody's like, I really loved your work, and I mean, we all appreciate hearing that,
Right.
especially
right.
in an industry that so often treats you like you're not, like you don't matter. You have to fight to, so yeah, I was talking to this magician friend of mine, Michael Weber, and he was saying that some guy who he didn't know at all really wanted to take him out to lunch and ask him questions, and he was very specific. It's 1 hour, and and he already had some communication with the guy and he knew he wasn't a weirdo or whatever.
Right.
And he's like, I think I'll do it. I don't know if he did.
And you never know what comes out of something like that. You never know for both parties. Maybe it added something to Michael, to his life, and you just never know how we impact each other. And if we take that moment to be open to the antennas that are around us, sometimes when it's safe and when it's well thought out, and it's, you never know.
You hear those stories of like Chris Christopherson used to sweep the floors at the studio.
Yeah.
I mean, people want to encourage talent. If you can spot people who've got something, and
Right.
you want it to grow. You want to help it grow. So
Right.
I do.
Yeah. I've been in the music industry my whole life, and one of my jobs as a sales rep for a record label went away because of the shift from physical to digital music and streaming.
Right.
And I was wondering if maybe you could talk a little bit about the documentary you produced about the impact of the shift on musicians from physical to streaming and digital.
Yeah, I mean, so I directed a documentary called The Shopkeeper, and it tells the story of the arc of the music business through my producer, Mark Coleman, who started out in a garage band from Grand Haven, Michigan, and went through this hippie band in Boulder, Colorado, to producing records for Carole King, to having Ani DeFranco do like a dozen albums in his studio, a lot of great Texas artists, Tom Russell, and then fighting to keep his studio open in the age of streaming.
Right.
And I was dealing with it in my own life, because I felt like when my record Men came out, I had positioned, like I'd worked so hard. I'd had the song on the TV show. I had, I felt like I was ready to move to the next level. And it just became so clear that the rug had been pulled out. This goal that I was trying to get to, it wasn't just whether you can make it to that goal or not. The goal was gone. And that was really hard for me. I didn't know what to do with myself. I'm like, how do you promote something that nobody will buy anymore? And yet at the same time, people still love music, and people are always going to keep making music. So what do we do here? And so that was so the movie was once again, through a personal story, trying to educate, to solve my own questions, right? What do I do next? But also to educate people who didn't really understand why streaming was so different.
Mm-hmm.
Why, we'd had different formats over the years, from records to cassette tapes, 8-track tape, whatever. This was the whole different ball game. And so the documentary is explaining that, how we got to where we are.
Yeah, it's such a it's such a drastic thing that happened in the industry, and for musicians and for people all over the whole industry. Like you said, from someone like Mark, a producer, a studio owner, for everybody, it affected so many people. When there's a sports strike, it affects the vendors, it affects the concessions, and same thing in the music industry. And when I was starting to lose my job with the record label, and I could tell it was starting to, I was like hanging on by a thread, everybody around me was disappearing, and I'm looking around, and I just knew I was next at one point. And exactly. And I started to think, I always was, how do we solve this? What do we do? And one of the thoughts they had was, commercials with household name musicians being at the gas pump, pumping gas, and say, I can't keep making music unless you pay for it, or just, shopping in the grocery store and saying, because I think there's this misconception that anybody who has radio airplay or anybody who has a face on TV or in movies or internet is wealthy. It's so far from true. So far from true. Sometimes you sign a label deal for 1 million records before you see a penny. I mean, and you're paying them money.
Yeah, and that was never. I mean, it's not like the industry was ever really great for artists in the first place, right? I mean, deals could be really awful, and there was a lot of exploitation. But the difference was there was money coming in. People were buying a product.
Right.
And I recognize that music as a product was the exception. For all of history, it wasn't a product. Then with the invention of, first sheet music and then the phonograph, it became a physical product.
Right.
And that ended with streaming, because it was, anyone could have, it was what David Bowie correctly predicted, that music would be like water. You could just turn on the tap and there it would be. And so in a way, it's like, things change. The problem, of course, is that the streaming services are still making a ton of money off of musicians. The musicians, and people are shocked when they find out. They think, okay, it's streaming, but the artists get the money. They have no idea. They have no idea how little it is. It's like, I mean, it's like a quarter of a cent per stream. People just don't understand that. And so yes, so my, what I was trying to do with the movie was show this is affecting real people's lives, and it's going to affect the music that you can listen to.
Yeah.
So I think if there's anything that's come out of this whole Neil Young Spotify thing, it's that more people are becoming aware of
yes,
not just Spotify, all the streaming services, and how musicians don't benefit from. We've come to the place where we have all accepted that we have to be there for exposure, but we don't make any money there. We just give ourselves the opportunity to sell something else: t-shirts, tickets.
Right.
To a few people want vinyl,
Yeah.
So and then with COVID, anyway, hard times for musicians.
Yes, for sure. And some people don't realize that, is they enjoy the art so much to listen to it, but don't realize that it's something that is so volatile for musicians to be able to continue their craft without that revenue, to it's not monetized anymore in the way it used to be.
Yeah. So it's just, but as I see people learning more about this, I also see a lot of music lovers going, I get it, and I want to do something to support the artists. Like I sell music through Bandcamp, for example.
Right.
And
yes.
they give you the option of adding on, paying more, and most people do. Most people round up. So there are a lot of people who, if they're inclined to buy something from an artist at all, they will pay more. So that's good.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great thing that people who are the true music fans realize that they want to help support a little bit more by doing things like that. Yeah, it's wonderful to see.
Yeah, it's great.
In addition to your musical voice, your voice extends well beyond the music industry as someone who really cares about the earth and the welfare of its inhabitants. We were saying before, I wonder if you could speak just briefly, because I want to respect your time, today, but if you could tell us a little bit about some of the initiatives you've taken outside the world of music to make the world a better place.
Sure. Well, part of my hippie upbringing was being around like no nukes,
Right. Yeah.
Rallies, no nukes concerts, and seeing actually that combination of artists, working working for a cause or whatever. So that was also very normal for me growing up. I have a vivid memory of seeing Bonnie Raitt performing with Freebo at some No Nukes thing down in LA. And I don't know why, but I got to be backstage. It wasn't through some connection, my dad, I don't know, but I got to. And that made such an impression. Anyway, so yeah, I've been involved in environmental organizations. I co-founded a group called, well, it's originally called Citizens for Responsible Oil and Gas, and now it's called Climate First Replacing Oil and Gas. So the mission has evolved as readiness to grapple with the mission has evolved. So that's encouraging.
Yeah.
Just trying to get, not stopping production, but trying to make it safer and more environmentally better environmentally, and shifting away, trying to move to better energy sources.
Sure,
so that's
sure.
that. And then I also formed an organization called Every Child Returned, which was a protest of the family separation policy. We went and sat outside facilities holding the children who'd been taken from their parents at the border. So I did that. I worked as an election observer as part of Mission for Arizona, and was able to sit inside polling stations during the 2020 election. And that was really actually very inspiring, because all the election workers were bipartisan and it ran like a top. Which is why it's been very frustrating to watch all the brouhaha since then, because I was there and I just was it made me proud to be an American, to watch these people who maybe didn't agree, but they helped everybody vote. It was smooth. It ran great. It was very inspiring. I got there being ready to challenge, you got to let this person vote. And I never had,
didn't have to do that.
Didn't have to do anything. They were so, helpful and accommodating, and really trying to get people to get their vote in. So that was encouraging. And then I also, right now I'm working for the Beto O'Rourke campaign for governor. I am an out-of-state ambassador for Beto for Texas. Because I think he's great.
Yeah, that's great. I think when you talked about the, being involved in the counting of votes in Arizona like that, it is neat to see that people were so important. It was more important to them, the integrity of the process, than any of their political viewpoints as to which candidate they thought was better, but just the integrity of giving everybody a voice, which is how America was set up.
Yes, it should be a no-brainer.
Right.
It really should.
Right.
And it really was inspiring to see it working. Yeah.
Are there any plans to do some? Oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
Are there any plans to do any concerts with this music once I know it's been an unusual couple of years in our world with the different medical, the viruses and different things happening, but any plans as things start to turn in the right direction to do some shows with the album once it comes out?
Well, it's going to be a theatrical thing. And so I think that's what the shows will be.
Okay.
So it'll be a concert, but it will be a theater experience.
Gotcha. So it'd be more like what we were talking about earlier. Okay.
Yeah. That's my thought at the moment. And because everything is so weird and you never know if you book something, if it's going to get canceled.
Yeah.
We're just being very open-minded about what a show even looks like these days. It could be hybrid, virtual, real, it could be outside. I'm not sure. We're working on that part.
Right. What's the best way for music fans to learn more about you by means of social media, the places where you find yourself most active and most involved?
Yeah, well, the best thing, of course, is to join the mailing list, and you can go to rainperry.com and sign up there. I put out a semi-weekly email that's brief and hopefully entertaining. And then I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, Rain Perry Official on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm around.
Great. I just want to remind music fans everywhere that Rain Perry's new album, A White Album, and by the way, I got to say this real fast. I just love the fact before you said, this is my White Album. I love that you were kind of explaining the whole process of how it could be. People think White Album, they think of the Beatles, and you go, this is my White Album. And I just love that, that concept, you know, I love that. But a White Album, you know, will be released on April 15th. The first single, Money, is available right now, wherever you're listening to your music, to get excited about this album. And I just want to thank you so much for your time today, for your generosity of time. And I wish you the best with this new project and everything that comes beyond it.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about it and all your great questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We'll hope to see you soon.